The rise of Adolf Hitler was not inevitable, but the perfect storm of political, economic, and social chaos. Today we'll explore the conditions in Germany that allowed Hitler to seize power, the way in which it was seized, and the immediate impacts of that seizure. Germany's defeat in World War I in 1918 sent shockwaves through the nation. As a result of this loss, the Treaty of Versailles imposed crushing war reparations, payments Germany could barely afford. In meeting these payments, the German government resorted to printing more money, triggering one of the worst inflationary periods in history. Then came the Wall Street crash of 1929, which sent shockwaves through the global economy. German banks failed, businesses shut down, and unemployment skyrocketed to nearly 30% by 1932. The democratic German Weimar government struggled to respond. Without strong leadership, Germans turned to radical solutions. In this environment, the German Workers' Party was formed. A small, nationalist, anti-Semitic group. Recognizing its potential, Hitler joined the party and quickly rose to prominence. By 1920, it had been rebranded as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Hitler transformed it into a powerful movement, using mass rallies, propaganda, and paramilitary violence to gain attention. During this time, Germany was a battlefield. The Nazis had their paramilitary wing, the SA stormtroopers, who fought in the streets against the communists. The Weimar government, weak and divided, struggled to control the chaos. Political violence made many Germans desperate for stability, even at the cost of democracy. Many blamed the Weimar system for national humiliation, economic suffering, and political violence. Hitler and the Nazis exploited this discontent, promising a strong leader who would restore Germany's greatness. In November 1923, inspired by Mussolini's March on Rome, Hitler attempted to overthrow the Bavarian government in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The coup failed, and Hitler was arrested, but rather than destroying his movement, his trial gave him national attention. Sentenced to 5 years in prison, Hitler only served 9 months. During this time, he wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a manifesto outlining his beliefs in German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the destruction of democracy. After his release, Hitler restructured the Nazi Party. He focused on legal means of gaining power, rather than outright rebellion. In March 1932, Hitler ran for president against Paul von Hindenburg, Germany's aging leader. Although he lost, Hitler secured over 13 million votes, an unprecedented number for an extremist party. The Nazis were now the largest party in the Reichstag, Germany's parliament. Despite his mistrust of Hitler, Hindenburg was pressured by conservatives and business leaders to appoint Hitler as chancellor, head of the Reichstag, in January 1933, believing he could be controlled. It was a fatal miscalculation. Just weeks after Hitler became chancellor, disaster or opportunity struck. In February 1933, the Reichstag building was set on fire. Hitler blamed communists and used the crisis to push through the Reichstag Fire Decree, which suspended civil liberties and allowed mass arrests of political opponents. With some of his opponents imprisoned or silenced, Hitler introduced the Enabling Act in March 1933. This law gave him the power to rule by decree, bypassing the Reichstag and the president entirely. Intimidated by SA violence, most politicians voted in favor, effectively dismantling Germany's democracy. Within months, all opposition parties were banned, trade unions were dissolved, and Germany had become a one-party dictatorship under Hitler. The Nazis didn't just control Berlin, they moved quickly to dominate all of Germany. State and local governments were purged of non-Nazi officials. In April 1933, the law for the restoration of professional civil service forced Jews and political opponents out of government jobs. Soon, every mayor, police chief, and bureaucrat answered to the Nazi Party. Opposition to the Nazis didn't just disappear, it was crushed. SA stormtroopers, emboldened by the government, carried out a wave of political murders. Left-wing activists, trade unionists, and even conservatives who opposed Hitler were assassinated. With no one left to resist, Hitler's power grew unchecked. In May 1933, Nazi students, backed by the regime, staged mass book burnings across Germany. Works by Jewish authors, political opponents, and so-called degenerate thinkers such as Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud were destroyed. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, declared that Germany's new culture had to be pure and free from harmful ideas. This was just the beginning of the Nazi war on intellectual freedom. The Nazis didn't just target books. They took over Germany's entire cultural life. Theaters, operas, and cinemas were forced to follow Nazi ideology. Jewish actors, directors, and musicians were banned. Within months of passing the Enabling Act, Germany was no longer a democracy. The Nazis had seized control of the government, the media, education, and culture. This is how authoritarian rule takes hold. Not overnight, but step by step, until resistance is no longer possible.